Hey friends, how's it going? My name is Gabby. Welcome back to my channel, and today we're going to be doing another round of some personalized book recommendations. This is a video that I've done 2 times before, but it's actually been almost about 2 years since the last time that I made a video like this. And how this works is that I ask on my Instagram stories for any kind of like personalized book recommendations that you're looking for, whether that's certain tropes in books or different kind of plot points that you like, or just something with similar vibes to something else that you love. And then I find book recommendations for all of those things. And so I have a number, like so many different like little prompts that you guys requested that I can go through in this video with tons of different book recommendations. Like, I am so excited about this list. I feel like I really nailed it with some of these, you know? But before we do jump into today's video, I just wanted to say a huge thank you to Ana Luisa for sponsoring today's video. Ana Luisa's jewelry will elevate your day-to-day life because they offer long-lasting, tarnish-free jewelry essentials that you can feel good about wearing, and I can definitely confirm this because I've been working with Ana Luisa for like 2 years now, and seriously, all of their jewelry is the best. I'm absolutely obsessed with their rings. I'm always impressed by, you know, how they don't leave any residue behind on my finger. Like, I never take these rings off, by the way. 100% of their pieces are strength and humidity tested, and their designs are super affordable, starting at just $39. It's really great too because they offer free and fast US shipping and affordable shipping worldwide. And I really love the packaging that they have because their packaging is so simplistic and it's very sustainable because it's so small. It comes in the tiniest little box. You can tell that their jewelry is crafted with the planet in mind because the brand is carbon neutral and they offset 100% of their carbon footprint. And you know, Mother's Day is coming up, and I do think Ana Luisa would be the perfect gift for any mom out there. Their jewelry really is so stunning and would be such a thoughtful gift, and there really is something out there for everyone. The pieces that I selected this time include this ring that I'm wearing. This one is really cool because half of it just looks like a regular band, and then on the other side when it comes around it has these little diamond studs on it, and I think it makes it look so freaking cool. It kind of looks like the tail of a snake or something, which I really like. And then I also have this other ring where there's like a simplistic thin gold band, but then there's this really beautiful gold chain that kind of hangs down underneath it, and I just think that looks really cool. I've never seen anything like this on a ring. And then I also got another one of their necklaces, and this one is so freaking cute because it just has a little whale's tail on it with a few little like glittery looking pieces, and this necklace is so cute and so simplistic. I really love the adorable and kind of simplistic necklaces that Ana Luisa has because I'm not a super huge like flashy jewelry person, but these ones just add so much to an outfit without trying so hard. So definitely be sure to click the link down in my description box, and when you use my code gabbyreads20 you can get 20% off your order. And thank you so much to Ana Luisa for sponsoring today's video. And now let's get into the book recommendations. Alright, so the first personalized book recommendations come from one of my friends, Ashley, and then also Kay Bradley asked for psychologically scary horror books. And usually psychological horror is like my favorite genre of horror. Like, those are usually some of my favorite horror books. And 2 books I would highly recommend that I think have really great psychological horror include Our Wives Under the Sea as well as Mother Thing. I feel like both of these books do a really great job of dealing with like some intense stuff psychologically when it comes to the horror, right? Because both of these stories are really about like grief and like losing a loved one and like watching a loved one change because of grief. And I think that that's really sad and really horrifying, and I think both of these books do an excellent job with like getting into your head with the horror, you know? It's like the real life horror, the stuff that really scares me. And then the next one is that I did have a few different friends request a haunted house, anything as scary as Stolen Tongues kind of haunted house horror. I mean, you know, I had to do it. I have to whip out my favorite haunted house horror, I think, is Kill Creek. This one just has the best ambiance to me for like a haunted house, and it's just a really fun story where we're following 4 horror authors who are going to be having to stay the night in a haunted house on Halloween night, and it's going to be live streamed to America. Like, this just has one of my favorite premises. But of course, if you haven't read The Haunting of Hill House, I would also highly recommend this. And then also recently I just read The Spite House, which this one also kind of revolves around a haunted house and like people trying to stay in the haunted house and prove that there's a haunting there, even even though this one wasn't my favorite, it was still a really good haunted house kind of book. So if you're looking for more recs, I would recommend that one. I did have a few requests as well for thrillers with sapphic main characters or that have like sapphic romance in it. And so with these recommendations, I don't know if these would be considered sapphic necessarily, but there's definitely some female things happening in them. Like for example, They Never Learn is one of my favorite thrillers that has a bisexual protagonist. If you're looking for books like this, then I'm sure you've probably heard of They Never Learn because that's like the go-to recommendation, I would assume. Then I would also recommend The Writing Retreat by Julia Bartz. This book also has some female things happening in it, and this book is just a little bit unhinged in a way that I did not expect, but it also kind of has that like sapphic energy kind of stuff happening throughout this book that I wasn't really expecting, but it's definitely there. And then also recently, What Lies in the Woods was a book that I just recently read for my book club, and this one also has a bisexual protagonist, and even though there's not a lot of female things actually happening on page in this book, there's definitely, you know, moments where she talks about her bisexuality and maybe being attracted to a woman. And so these definitely have the female, you know, things happening, but they are bisexual characters and there's not too much on-page things happening. I feel like it actually is really hard to find thriller books with female representation in them. So if you are watching this and you have any like sapphic thriller recommendations, then do let me know. All right, the next one came from the Wayward Library, and this is one that I love because they asked for horror books set by or on the ocean. And again, you know, if you haven't read Our Wives Under the Sea, part of this does take place, you know, because the whole thing is that her wife goes like under the ocean for 6 months and they get lost down there, and then when the wife comes back, she's not really the same. So there's definitely like some ocean things happening in this one. But then also one of my faves, The Deep by Nick Cutter. This book involves this plague that's like taking over the world, but they think they find the cure for this plague, but it's at the bottom of the ocean. And so it's about this team of like researchers who go down to like the depths, bottom of the ocean to try to study this thing that might help them cure the plague that's happening on the surface. Oh my gosh, this book is absolutely wild. It is so freaking creepy. If you have like fear of like the underwater or the ocean, highly recommend this one. All right, the next one says an easy to read adult male romance, and I would definitely recommend Him by Serena Bowen and Elle Kennedy. If you have not read this one yet, I think this one's probably my favorite male romance that I've ever read. It involves these two guys named Jamie and Wes who are both hockey players, and it's like a situation where they used to go to the same hockey camp when they were younger. Wes always liked Jamie, but Jamie always thought maybe he was straight. And then now it takes place years later where they're coming back to the same hockey camp that they used to go to together to be coaches, and things just get so steamy between them. I honestly want to reread this book just talking about it because I fucking love Jamie and Wes so much. So highly recommend Him if you haven't read it. But then if you're looking for some cute other options as well, I would definitely recommend Top Secret, which is by the same author duo as Him. It's Serena Bowen and Elle Kennedy. And then also Heels Over Head by Elsie Springer. This is one that I've only read once, and I read it in like 2017, so it's been a while since I've read this one. I kind of do want to reread it, but this one is also one that I just really remember as being really cute. It's about these two guys who are both divers, and they're going to be trying to get ready for the Olympics, and their romance at times can feel so forbidden in this, and it's just so freaking beautiful. Like, I just remember really loving this one. The next one says a thriller with a heavy romance subplot, and for this I think I would recommend You Shouldn't Have Come Here by Geneva Rose, because even though this was a 1-star book for me and it did not end up working for me, I think if you're looking for a thriller that has a really big romantic element to it, then I do think this could be the book for you, because I'm not sure if I'm personally a fan of like a lot of romance in my thrillers. Like, I don't know if that's like my thing or not. Like, sometimes it works for me and sometimes it doesn't. But this book, I think if you're looking for something that has a lot of romance and thrills at the same time, I think this one could work for you. This one is about this woman who like goes to rent an Airbnb in the middle of nowhere, and then the guy that owns the Airbnb is going to be like staying there with her, and it's definitely like a romance happening between these two, but then there's like some shady things from his past that she doesn't know if she can trust him. And then the next one says a book that includes a bigger role for a cat but doesn't have to be a main character. I would highly recommend, if you haven't read it, The Last House on Needless Street, because this book was so unique. It's like a horror kind of thriller book where we get the perspective of a cat. Like, the cat's not necessarily the main character in this book, but we do get the cat's point of view in this book, which was just so unique. The next one is for a murderous couple in a thriller, and I would definitely recommend, if you have not read My Lovely Wife by Samantha Downing. That's probably my favorite like murdery couple in a thriller that I've read personally. I would also recommend the show Santa Clarita Diet if you haven't seen that show. Oh my god, that show is so freaking good, so underrated. It's on Netflix. But anyways, My Lovely Wife, this is a book where the wife is like a killer, like she has like the urge to kill, and so the husband like helps her find people to kill, and it's just so freaking entertaining. All right, the next one says weird, unsettling horror dealing with grief like Our Wives Under the Sea. And you know, again, like Our Wives Under the Sea, I would definitely recommend Mother Thing if you're looking for something similar that's dealing with grief as like one of the main themes of the horror. But also, if you haven't read that book, This Thing Between Us, I feel like that's another really good horror novel that deals with grief, and it's kind of more like psychological as well. That's one where we follow a protagonist, this guy who his wife has recently died. All right, the next one says please more hidden identity tropes like Top Secret and The Neighbor favorite. It's my favorite. And so what Leslie is talking about in this is because they have like hidden identities from each other. So like in Top Secret and in The Neighbor favor, they don't know that it's each other that they've been talking to. Like that's the trope that they're talking about. And so if you want more of this, I would recommend this book that I just read called The Nanny. What's happening in this book is that our protagonist, she used to have this OnlyFans account. She has since deleted it, but now she's gonna be nannying for this guy who's this chef, and he's like a single father, and she realizes that this guy was on her OnlyFans, but he doesn't know that it was her. So we do get that kind of awkward like hidden identity trope in this book where she knows that he was the one that was signed up to her OnlyFans, but he doesn't know it was her because she never showed her face or like something of that nature. And it was just very interesting, but also because this story involves like an OnlyFans, just know that there is a lot of smut in this one. Like this one is definitely, you know, a hard R rating, if you know what I mean. The next one says more short story horror recs. I read a few you had talked about and would love more. That is so exciting. And I also am just the biggest fan of short horror. I would say if you have not read these collections by Eric LaRocca, because I know Eric LaRocca has a lot of different short horror out these days, but this one in particular, They Were Here Before Us, and then The Trees Grew Because I Bled There. These are both recent favorites of mine, especially The Trees Grew Because I Bled There. Like if you're only gonna read one of the two, I would highly recommend this one. But I would also recommend Cursed Bunny. This one is by a Korean author, and this one it's not exactly like all horror. There's definitely some stories that feel more horror in this, and then there's some that are a little bit more like sci-fi vibes, and then there's some that are just kind of like sad and kind of dramatic. But this collection is one of my all-time favorite collections of short stories. I just think it's so freaking good, and the horror in this definitely hits. Like, it is gruesome. But this one, I'm obsessed with this request because they said a book with Wildflower by RM Vibes, which if you know, RM is one of my biases in BTS, and Wildflower is one of his songs that is just absolutely stunning, beautiful. And as cheesy as it sounds, a book that I would actually compare to Wildflower would be the book Wild, because the book Wild just feels like it gives me a similar feeling as I get as when I listen to Wildflower. And I just feel like this song really gives me the vibes of like being out in nature, you know, because the lyrics are like flower field, that's where I'm at, open land, that's where I'm at, no name, that's what I have, no shame, I'm on my grave. And he's saying when your feet don't touch the ground, when your own heart underestimates you, when your dreams devour you, when you feel you're not yourself. And I feel like this song is just so connected to nature in so many ways. And I really feel the same about this book, like Wild, you know, because it's about this woman who has been going through a really awful time. She's recently lost her mother, and it's kind of about how she's using nature to like connect to herself and her soul again. And I just feel very similarly about these two. Like, I feel like the song Wildflower would be like the perfect soundtrack for the book Wild. Ooh, okay, the next one says a romance wreck with maybe in another life vibes. I would recommend In 5 Years, because this one kind of, you know, because maybe in another life it has that like plot point where you're following a character who has two different decisions, and depending on which decision she made, you kind of follow both journeys, like to see how her life would have been different based off of one decision that she made. And so in the book In 5 Years, we follow this character who wakes up 5 years into the future, and she's like with a man that she doesn't know and like all this stuff. So it's kind of, you know, similar to that book in the sense that you're following a character who's like, you know, depending on one decision she made in her life, it changes how her life looks 5 years later, and she's like trying to navigate that, and there's that little bit of like time travel-y feel to it. So I do think if you liked Maybe in Another Life, you might like In 5 Years as well. I really enjoyed both. The next one says books with protective male love interests. I think the book All Roads Lead Here by Mariana Zapata probably has one of my favorite like protective male love interests. This one is a really, really long. Honestly, it's kind of long. It's like 600 pages, but it's this really beautiful romance book where this woman like moves to a new town. She's wanting to start over, and she moves to this like small little mountain town, and then it's about how she starts to get involved with the guy who's like the landlord, like the guy who's like renting her the property. Oh my gosh, I love the next one. They asked for romance books with Taylor Swift references, which is so great because I feel like lately it's becoming a lot more popular that I've noticed that romance books will have a lot of Taylor Swift references. Like for example, Kiss Her Once for Me. This one is full of Taylor Swift references because both of these main characters are huge Swifties, and this one's a female-female romance, and it has like Christmas vibes as well because it takes place around the holiday season. But oh my gosh, this is one of my favorite romances that I read last year, and it is freaking full of Taylor Swift references to the point where like there's a whole scene where these characters are debating like what's the best Taylor Swift album and why is it Evermore. Freaking cute. I love this book. Highly recommend. If you haven't read Kiss Her Once for Me, like what are you even doing? And then also X's and O's is another more like recently published romance that also has a lot of Taylor Swift references. This girl in this book is a major Swiftie. There's like a scene in this book where she's like jamming to All Too Well, and it's just so freaking cute. Next question is also one that I'm obsessed with because they asked for a book with Like Crazy by Jimin vibes, which Like Crazy is a freaking banger, okay? One of my favorite songs of this year for sure. It just has like the best vibes, and when I hear the song Like Crazy, it makes me think of like dancing in a club and like just forgetting the night and like dancing the night away. Like it's so much fun. And books that I would recommend for if you're looking for something with like crazy vibes would definitely be this Written in the Stars collection of romance books. I just feel like these books would definitely capture that kind of vibe, at least for me. In this series, we have 2 books that are female-female romances, and then we do have one where it's a male and female romance, but we follow this group of friends and they all live in Seattle, and it's just the cutest. It's one of my favorite romance series ever, and I just think, I don't know, the song Like Crazy just really fits the vibes of these books in my opinion. The next one says manga recommendations for new manga readers. I always get requested a lot of times to make a video dedicated to like manga I would recommend for people that are just trying to get into manga, and so I would love to eventually do a whole video full of recommendations like this. But I think for me, I would definitely recommend Spy Family pretty universally. Like I feel like anybody could enjoy Spy Family. I feel like it's a really fun manga to get you into manga, and Spy Family is just really adorable because you're following this like fake family, like because this guy is a spy and he's trying to get to this school, and so he needs a fake wife and a fake daughter to like go to the school so that he can like investigate it. And so it's really cute because it's this family where they're not a real family, they're like a fake family, but they're insanely adorable to read about. And the daughter in this book, Anya, she's a telepath, so she can like read their minds, and it's just insanely cute. Like it is so freaking cute. Highly recommend Spy Family. But I would also recommend Orange. Orange is definitely one of my favorite mangas that I've ever read, if not my favorite manga that I've ever read. And this one's more for the people who like those kind of like sci-fi-ish romance books, because this one is one where we follow this character who, she's a young girl in high school, and she gets a letter from herself from 10 years in the future telling her that something awful has happened and she wants her to like correct the mistakes that she made in her life. And it is just, it's so cute. This one is everything. There's actually a really cute love triangle happening throughout this book that, you know, usually I'm like, ew, about love triangles with like high school relationships, but like, oh my god, these characters are all so freaking precious. I absolutely adore them. Like this is like my favorite manga. Then the next one asked for a coming of age manga series, which of course I would also recommend Orange. There are 7 volumes total in the Orange series, and this is like my ideal coming of age kind of high school adorable manga. But then I would also recommend Blue Flag if you're looking for something that has like some subtle romance, but it's mostly like a coming of age about these 2 boys. Oh my god, this one has major like Heartstopper vibes in a way. It's just so freaking cute. All right, the next one says marriage falling apart in a thriller, and for that I would definitely recommend Rock Paper Scissors by Alice Feeney, because this is one of my favorite thrillers where it's like the main thing happening is that a marriage is falling apart and they don't know if they can trust each other anymore, and they're on this drive where it's like very snowy and very atmospheric, and they get to this place that's like kind of, it seems kind of spooky, like something's going on, but the whole thing is that they're trying to save their marriage and they feel like their marriage is kind of falling apart, and it's just so entertaining. I love Rock Paper Scissors so freaking much. One of my favorite thrillers. It has so many good twists. The next one says a thriller rec for those just dipping their toes into the genre, and of course for that I would recommend Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn. If you have not read Gone Girl yet, I mean, come on, Gone Girl is the thriller that got me into reading thriller books. I talk about this all the time. Like, Gone Girl is the reason why I am an avid reader today, because this book got me obsessed with thrillers. And I think this is like the classic thriller. Like, if you have not read this one and you've not been spoiled for what happens in this book, I think it is so shocking, so surprising, so much fun. I also do have a video that's entirely dedicated to thriller books I would recommend for beginners. So I will have that video linked down below if you want to see a whole list of recommendations that I think are books that would be perfect. The next one I got says a short thriller book recommendation, and I would recommend the book Confessions by Kane Minato. This one's actually from a Japanese author, and this book is pretty short. I want to say it's only about 200 pages, but it's one of the best thrillers that I've ever read because there are so many plot twists. You know, it's really cool because this book is only, I want to say it's like 6 chapters long, and the chapters are kind of a little bit lengthier, but the overall story is only about 200-ish pages. But the amount of freaking plot twists this author crammed into this small book is actually pretty incredible. Oh my gosh, I love Becca asked for books to read on a rainy summer day. I love that so much, and I feel like I know exactly the vibe that you're looking for. I would highly recommend reading Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe on a rainy summer day, and like on any summer day, but especially a rainy summer day, because Aristotle and Dante is one of my favorite books of all time. It's one of my most reread books of all time. I think I've read it like 3, maybe 4 times now, and there's just something so cozy about this book. You know, it takes place in 1980s Texas, and it takes place during the summer. It's like the perfect summer read, period. But it's about these young boys, Aristotle and Dante, who are best friends, and Aristotle's starting to realize that he might have more romantic feelings for his friend Dante. And it's just so cute. It's one of my favorite things that I've ever read in my freaking life. Like, the writing in this book is just so lyrical and beautiful that's why I think it'd be perfect to read on like a rainy summer day, because it's really got that like coziness to it. And then the next question said books with strong summer vibes. So of course, I would also recommend Aristotle and Dante as having very strong summer vibes. Like, it's my favorite like summer reread book. But then I would also recommend, if you're looking for something more on like the horror or thriller side for this summer, I think My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix. I don't know what it is about this book, but it has major summer vibes to me. This honestly reads like a fun like summer 80s horror movie, and so I would definitely recommend this one. And also The Last Time I Lied by Riley Sager. I don't know why this one is just so perfect to me to read in the summer, and maybe it's because it involves kind of like a camp situation and there's like a haunted like lake. You know, I'm sure this one would be great to read at any time of year, but I don't know why, especially in the summer, I just think this would be such a fun one to read. Next, my friend Katie sent in a few different prompts, like requests that were so interesting. The first one she said is books you have to physically read or have to annotate, which I love that question because I do think there are some books that I would recommend, you know, physically reading it instead of like listening to it on audio, or like, you know, physically reading it so that you can mark it up because it's just so beautifully written. And I would definitely say We Spread by Ian Reid is a book that I would highly recommend reading a physical copy of and like writing in it, because I definitely annotated the hell out of my copy of this book because it's just so gorgeously written, and I feel like when you're reading it with your eyes and like picking up on the small things, it just makes the story so much better, you know? And it is really a quick read. Like, even reading this with your eyes, I don't think it would take very long because there's so much spacing in between the words, you know what I'm saying? And Katie also asked for an audiobook that far surpasses the physical reading experience, which I also love this question because I do think there are some audiobooks that are so good and even better than reading the book physically, and I would definitely recommend Sleeping Giants. Oh my gosh, listen to this book on audio. Please do yourself a favor and listen to this one on audio because it's absolutely incredible. This one is the first book in a sci-fi trilogy where we follow this character who they are discovering that there are giant like body parts, like giant robot body parts like buried underneath the ground. This one is just so cool because it reads kind of like War of the Worlds or something. Like, that's like what I would compare it to, but it's so much fun, dude. The audiobook is a full cast. It sounds like a freaking sci-fi action movie. It is just absolutely incredible. Like, the sound effects, like all the effort that went into making this audiobook, it's such an experience, and I would highly recommend the audiobook over reading it physically. And then with that, I would also recommend one of my favorite books that I've read this year, Any Man by Amber Tamblyn. While I do recommend reading it physically as well because I definitely annotated and marked this thing up because I loved it so much, but I would also highly recommend this one on audio because this is another audiobook where there's a full cast. There's a lot of like moments where there's a sound of like a talk show and different things like that, and all of the sound effects are incredible in this book. Really, the audiobook was such an experience, and all the voice actors did such an incredible job at bringing this book to life that it made me emotional even listening to this book on audio. Like, it's so freaking good. And then Katie also asked for a mystery or thriller that genuinely shocked you by how horror and intense it ended up getting. I think for this, I would definitely say Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby, because this is a thriller that I like went into it thinking like it's just gonna be an average thriller, and then this book gets so freaking gory and violent, and I was like, what in the Quentin Tarantino is going on? This book, it really does read like a Quentin Tarantino movie, and if you know Quentin Tarantino movies, then you know what I'm talking about. Like, this shit is violent, it is disturbing, and this story, I mean, it's about these two men who are going out there to get revenge for their gay sons who were brutally murdered. This book does not hold back on the revenge. Like, holy crap, I was not prepared for how violent this book was gonna end up being, but like in a good way. All right, the next two are ones that I put together because I have the same recommendations for both of these, but they asked for books with weird horror like Cursed Bunny or Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke, and then another one said a thriller horror that will make me say, what the fuck did I just read, in the best way possible. So if you're looking for something that's kind of like weird horror that makes you question everything that you just read, I would definitely read more from Eric LaRocca, The Trees Grew Because I Bled There, especially the short story that's called You're Not Supposed to Be Here. I would highly recommend that one if you're looking for something that's kind of like weird and makes you think like, oh my god, wait, what the fuck? Like, what was that? And then I would also recommend, if you really want something that makes you think like, wait, what the fuck did I just read? Killing Stalking Volume 1, hello. This one is like a manga, but it's actually manhwa because it's Korean, and this one is so dark and so disturbing. It's definitely a hard 18 plus though. Like, this one is not for the faint of heart, but this one will be like you'll finish this and be like, what the fuck did I just read? And I gave it 5 stars. Like, I had a freaking great time reading this. I was so invested the entire time, but by the end I was like, wait, what the fuck did I just read, you know? All right, the next two that I got were for romance books that don't have too much smut, or for somebody that doesn't read a lot of romance, who doesn't want a lot of smut in the romance books. I would definitely recommend anything by Christina Lauren, at least a lot of their more recently published books. Definitely not like their first published books, because like they did have a few books that came out early on in their career that were very smutty. Like, they were very smutty, but any of their like more recent stuff, like the Unhoneymooners, or a lot of their more recent adult romance books, they are not too smutty. Like, if I'm remembering correctly, I think there's only maybe like 1 or 2, you know, kind of smutty sex scenes in this book, but I don't think it's anything too crazy. Like, I think this is very, very light on the smut, but very fun on all of the other vibes that you might look for in a romance. And then same with like Emily Henry. If I'm trying to recall, because, you know, it has been a minute since I've read this, but I don't think Emily Henry's books go too hard on the smut, you know, like there might be a few scenes like here and there, but they're definitely not anything too intense. Like, I would definitely recommend Book Lovers. Book Lovers is probably my favorite Emily Henry that I've read so far. I mean, I haven't, at this point in time, I have not read her newest book, Happy Place, but I do think Emily Henry's books, for the most part, are pretty, you know, PG-13 rated. Like, they're not too bad. This next one is one that I really love too. They asked for horror that has absolute anarchy or lack of control, like the movie Mother. And if you haven't seen the movie Mother, that movie is absolute chaos, and like there is no control, there is no reason for things. It's just, you know, it's chaotic. And I think books that I would recommend for something like this would definitely be Bunny by Mona Awad. I feel like Bunny is one of those horror books that has like a lack of control. It's just absolutely chaotic. You have no idea what's going on, and it's just kind of fun and crazy. And so Bunny is definitely one that I would recommend for that, but also We Need to Do Something by Max Booth III. This is another one that is just absolutely unhinged, and like you can't really predict where it's going. It's just about this family who, you know, like there's a tornado warning happening, and so they all lock themselves into their small little bathroom in the house to like, you know, get away from the tornado, but then they end up getting trapped in this bathroom because there's like a tree that like falls in front of the door, and they get stuck in the bathroom, and it's kind of about how they're just losing their minds because they're all stuck together. And this book is just absolutely unhinged, and it's chaos, and I love it so much. And the next one says books with toxic mothers, since Mother's Day is coming up, and I love that question so much. I think books that have some of my favorite toxic mothers that I've ever read include Big Little Lies by Leanne Moriarty. This one, you know, it's about a bunch of moms, there's murder, it's like their kids are all in kindergarten, and it's honestly kind of like Mean Girls, but if all of the Mean Girls were moms. And then of course also Little Fires Everywhere is one of my favorite books that has kind of like toxic mothers in it. I feel like this book in general is just so focused on like motherhood and like the way that different mothers can be mothers and like what makes someone a mother. But then also a manga recommendation, of course, would be Blood on the Tracks, because holy shit, if we're talking toxic mom moms. Hello. This one definitely gives major like Bates Motel vibes. It's got that energy for sure, where you're following a woman who is just absolutely unhinged and does a lot of questionable shit that makes you very uncomfortable. Ooh, I love this next question too. They asked for coming of age horror in a small town like Stranger Things, Twin Peaks, Dark, It, and Monster Squad. I would highly recommend, if you have not read Something is Killing the Children, this one definitely has that like horror in a small town vibe. We're following a town where only the kids can see the monsters, so this monster's only killing the children in the town. It's really cool though, because then we follow this one adult and her name is Erica Slaughter, and she's the only adult that can see the monsters, and so it's about how she's coming to this town to like help the kids. It's so fascinating. And then I would also recommend The Bright Lands by John Fran, because this one is a horror novel where we're following a gay protagonist. He was originally from Texas and he ended up moving to New York, but now his younger brother, who is still living in Texas and he's a football player, he has recently gone missing, and so he's coming back to Texas to try to figure out like what could have happened to his brother. There's a lot of football in this book. It's very like small town vibes, and the horror in this is like genuinely so disturbing. And I always say this is like Stephen King, but if you're looking for something a little bit more gay, you know, it's so good. This next one, it said a romance that feels like Love is Blind, which I love this question so much, and I put so much thought into this because I was like, have I read a romance that's like Love is Blind? But then I thought of the book My Favorite Half Night Stand by Christina Lauren, and I feel like this one is kind of like that vibe, or at least as close to it as I could think of. Because, you know, Love is Blind, the whole idea is that they're falling in love with each other without really knowing who the other person is or seeing who the other person is. And so in the Christina Lauren book, we're following a group of friends where there's like one girl and there's like 3 guys in their friend group, and she really likes one of the guys, and so she starts talking to him on an app where she's like using a fake name. It's kind of like a catfish situation going on, which honestly like I wasn't very cool with, because like it's really not cool to like catfish somebody like that, but it kind of reminded me of Love is Blind because it's like they're falling for each other because of their personalities instead of their appearance, I guess. But I would also love to know if you have any book recommendations for something that's kind of similar to Love is Blind, because I would also be very down to read something like that. The next one says thrillers by people of color authors, hard to find thrillers, which I do think it's so unfortunate that with the thriller genre there are so many white authors, and it can be really hard to find thrillers that are written by authors of color. But one that I would definitely recommend is Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby. This is one that I just previously mentioned, but it's definitely one of my top favorites. I would also recommend Reprieve by James Han Matson, and this one is from this man who's an Asian author. And this one, yes, it might be a little bit of a stretch to call it a thriller because it's really more of like a literary thriller kind of vibe, but this one was so freaking good. Like I loved this book so much. And I would also recommend The Butcher by Jennifer Hillier, or like most of Jennifer Hillier's stuff is pretty good. Like she's definitely had a few misses for me, but The Butcher was always one of my favorites. Like this one and Jar of Hearts are probably my 2 favorites from her, and Jennifer Hillier is an Asian woman as well, so those are a few recs that I would have. All right, the next 2 that I got 2 requests for books with similar vibes to the show Beef, because Beef is a new show on Netflix that I have just been absolutely obsessed with. Like I think it's so freaking funny, it's so well written. And a romance book that I think could be comparable to the show Beef is Dating You, Hating You by Christina Lauren, because this is definitely about 2 characters who have this like banter where they kind of like hate each other, but underneath that there's kind of like romance, like romantic feelings. And this one was never like one of my favorite Christina Lauren books, but I do think it is pretty comparable to the TV show if you're looking for something with like a similar vibe. And as far as like a thriller book goes, I kind of think the book The Kind Worth Killing by Peter Swanson would be a good recommendation for something kind of similar to Beef, just because it's like characters where they're just kind of like unhinged and the decisions that they make are just kind of like wild, and it's very twisty in the same way that Beef is. So those are 2 things that I could think of that I would recommend for if you're looking for something kind of like Beef. All right, the next one says books that happen in a short time period, like only 24 hours to 1 week. And I think I have a recommendation for both. If you're looking for something that takes place in 24 hours, I would highly recommend No Exit by Taylor Adams. This is one that all of the story takes place on one night, and it is very, very intense. And then I would also recommend Lock Every Door by Riley Sager. This one, it takes place over the course of like about a week, I want to say. Yeah, we jump back and forth in time in this book, so it'll say like 6 days earlier, and then you get to read about that day, and you kind of go back and forth between what happened about a week ago and the present day. And then the last one that I have, which I also absolutely love this question, is a book that gives Mono by RM vibes. I love all the questions about RM, like it makes my heart so happy. And if you didn't know, Mono is RM's album's mixtape that he released like a couple years ago. I think it came out in 2018. And Mono has one of my favorite songs of all time, Soul, on it, and it has so many beautiful songs, and I really feel like Mono is the kind of album that you would listen to on like a rainy summer day. And so for those reasons, I actually really think that Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe would be a great recommendation for the album Mono, because I really do feel like the album Mono, you know, a lot of the lyrics that he's talking about in this album are very like sad, but also like coming of age and like finding himself kind of lyrics, you know, and I just think it fits Aristotle and Dante so well, because I feel like this book talks a lot about, you know, the struggles of like growing up in a world where you just feel misunderstood and like nobody understands you and you're angry and you don't know why. I loved getting all of the BTS questions, by the way. Like, it was so much fun to try and find these things, and I did have a few people ask for like books like D-Day or books like August D Songs, and I literally could not think of anything, even though I desperately wanted to include those. But yeah, that's kind of a wrap on this round of personalized book recommendations. I know it was a lot, but trust me, there was even more questions asked. I wanted to include them all, but I couldn't because there was literally so many. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please let me know if you would like to see more videos like this in the future, because I would absolutely love nothing more than to make more videos like this, because I genuinely think it's so much fun. Thank you so much for watching. As always, just a reminder, don't forget to check out Ana Luisa. The link will be down in my description below. You can use my code gabbyreads20 to get 20% off your order. I really do think it would be the perfect gift for Mother's Day coming up very soon. So thank you so much, Ana Luisa. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again with another video very soon. Bye.